Now, are those some fine 1.8 bokeh or what?
This lens is so nice that I'm thinking about buying it twice. One for my Sony, obviously, and one for my Fuji. Yes, I'm crazy, but I've done this before with the goated Sigma 18-50mm f2.8, which this new Sigma 17-40mm f1.8 will be replacing simply because of the f1.8. And no, Michael, take off your tinfoil hat. This video isn't sponsored by Sigma. You're getting the legitimate Vong opinion here. Now with this, we're literally carrying a set of prime lenses in a relatively tiny zoom package. 3 of these in just one of this. It has all of your classic focal lengths right here, especially the 24mm and 35mm. Arguably the 2 most popular prime focal lengths for APS-C for every kind of photography. I'm talking street, I'm talking travel, and I'm talking portraits. Ooh, just look at all these f1.8 buttery Bokelicious shots. Tasty. Okay, I might be getting a little carried away, but at least I'm not getting tired of carrying it all day. Ooh! A rhyming twofer.
Let's go to 17.
And we also have the added advantage of the 17mm for either a wider landscape perspective or
for those dark and narrow alleyways. The f1.8 helps keep my ISO low and noise free.
Truly the best lens for everything.
Are you sure about that?
Jason Vong's a shill. It's not the best for everything. You can't zoom to get distant shots. You can't do sports. You can't do birds.
Everything my butt.
Listen, Michael, buddy, it's a tiny zoom lens that has a constant f1.8 aperture, alright? It's just 560 grams. Suck it up, bring a dedicated telephoto lens for your sports and your bird photography, alright? Or get my favorite pocket rocket of all time, the Sony RX100 Mark VII with its insane 24 to 200mm reach.
That's long enough for any man.
But yeah, there are some obvious cons to this lens, which we'll get there, but you know, just let me glaze a little first before we set it ablaze.
So what's the big deal here?
To catch my newbies up to speed, first off, this is actually excellent for full-frame cameras, which we'll talk about why later, but technically it is designed for APS-C, so taking the 1.5 times crop factor into consideration, the 17-40mm is technically a 25.5 to 60mm full-frame field-of-view equivalent. While not the longest reach, we still have a good amount of versatile coverage, almost equivalent to the full-frame 24 to 70mm lens, arguably the most popular do-it-all zoom lens for an actual full-frame camera. But this here is much smaller, much lighter, and much cheaper. Plus, there's no zoom lens quite like this with an f1.8 aperture in the market for modern mirrorless APS-C right now.
The ultimate convenience.
Now, it used to be that in order for us to see any difference from the photos that we take from our phones or from the kit lens that came with our cameras, we need to upgrade to a prime lens, which is a type of lens with a fixed focal length. For example, a 23mm is a 23mm. You cannot zoom. But what makes prime lenses so valuable is because of their large aperture value in nature. Usually you'll see f1.4, and with it we get that signature pro look, that big beautiful background blur. And it allows us to capture photos in low light with less noise. But because it's a fixed lens, if you want to go wider or tighter, you will need to switch to a different prime lens, which also means cha-ching, more money. But with the 17-40mm, it effectively replaces 3 of these prime lenses here, a 16, a 23, and a 30mm, which means less often for you to change lenses and less dust getting into your sensor. W.
It's a win.
Now, there's an obvious elephant in the room, f1.4 versus f1.8. These prime lenses here still have that slight advantage of f1.4, but it's very negligible in my opinion. We're only sacrificing about 2/3 of a stop of light, and our photos will have a little less blur of a background. But I think it's a great trade-off for that convenience of a zoom. That's why we say this zoom lens is like carrying a set of prime lenses. These types of prime-like zoom lenses are very rare.
I don't see them very often.
Plus, this 17-40mm actually has more advantages over these primes, in which we'll cover in great lengths now.
Image quality.
So this is an art series lens, as denoted by the A symbol, versus C on these primes at the 18 to 50 millimeter. Y'all went to school, y'all know that A is a higher grade than C. Nah, I'm playing. C stands for contemporary, and while they are great lenses, they are just one grade lower than art. The art series is the creme de la creme, the highest quality in terms of optics and performance. Think G Master versus G for Sony. Sharp at the center at f1.8, at 17mm, if we move into the corners, just a little soft, minor vignetting, but that's to be expected at the wide end, especially at f1.8. Corners do look better when we get into the tighter focal lengths, as you can see here at 40mm, and we're not going to notice this too much in the real world.
But what is the quality of the bokeh?
Bokeh balls, I wouldn't say they're balls. Chris Nichols from Petapixel put it aptly.
Does have a strong soap bubble effect.
And in some instances, I have to agree with him.
Just keep that in mind.
But otherwise, I'm fine with it, like in this butterfly shot. And star flares at f8, especially in this taxi shot here, looks great to me.
Handling.
Handling wise, there are a lot of buttons and toggles here versus the C lenses, so we're getting a much more enhanced user experience. Autofocus manual focus toggle, a focus hold button, but the one that is of value to me is the aperture ring, which is more handy to me on a Fuji system than on a Sony. You see, I own the X-T50 and I always have trouble changing the aperture in camera for some odd reason, which makes the 18 to 50mm here just a bit harder to use. Now, Fuji's own lenses have aperture rings built in, that's why it's easier to adjust the aperture. Yeah, I know, it's a me problem. Aside from that, this lens here does have weather sealing, so as long as your camera have weather sealing as well, then both can be in the rain with no problem. Just make sure to keep your hot shoes covered though. And the filter thread size, 67mm baby, which is the sweet spot for me, because as a video shooter myself, I happen to own a lot of ND filters in 67mm.
Autofocus.
Now some of these Sigma prime lenses here are nearly a decade old. The 30mm f1.4 in particular is from 2016, and the 16mm f1.4 is from 2017. They use stepping focus motors that are a bit outdated at this point. Now don't get me wrong, the autofocus on these are okay, they get the job done, but the 17 and 40mm uses the newer high response linear actuator, which focuses faster, but more importantly, a lot smoother, which is handy for rack focused video work. Take a look at this test here between the old Sigma 30mm f1.4 shot at f1.8 versus 30mm on the new Sigma 17 to 40mm. The new art lens is slightly more smoother when it racks back and forth between Vivian and the window. It's subtle, but it'll make a huge difference for some folks.
Video.
Absolutely goated for video for all APS-C cameras, but especially for the Sony a6700 and FX30 when shooting 4K 60p and 4K 120p because it has the autofocus motors to keep up, which we just saw. And the 17 to 40mm is internal zoom, by the way, so perfect for gimbal work. The balance is maintained when you zoom back and forth, but I also think this lens is excellent for some full frame users. Now, loads of Sony full frame cameras can double up as APS-C video cameras. Activate Super 35 mode and it crops away the vignetting. And especially for Sony a7 IV and a7C II users, your 4K 60p is forced into an APS-C Super 35 mode anyway, so now you have a lens that has a 25 to 60mm f1.8 full frame field of view equivalent look for all of your buttery smooth slow motion shots. But I personally have been enjoying it on my ZV-E1, which is a full-frame low-light beast of a camera, but notorious for the lack of APS-C mode in 4K because of the small 12-megapixel sensor. See here, APS-C mode is deactivated in 4K. However, because of its dynamic active stabilization feature, it basically crops like APS-C, allowing me to not only use this lens without the ugly vignetting, but also get that rock-steady footage. Now quality might take a slight hit, I'm sure, but come on, it ain't too shabby. Like I said, this lens does it all. But, alright Michael, let's talk cons.
The cons.
And I got about 4. Now, I've been calling this lens tiny and light, which is considered an insult for short kings like me, but it's important to note that this statement rings loud and true when comparing it to a lot of other lenses in the market.
My arm is actually getting tired.
If you're inexperienced with lenses, it does look large, and when you hold it, it does feel dense. But if you tried other lenses before, this is considered very light in comparison, and your overall bag weight will be technically lighter as opposed to carrying all these Sigma primes around. And by the way, if you have owned these Sigma primes for years, I do think this lens is worth upgrading to.
We can sell on eBay.
Con number 2, the price is $1,000. And while that is considered an incredible value for the optical and handling performance in the photography space, I get it, $1,000 isn't cheap for casual folks. But again, when you add up the price of these 3 Sigma prime lenses that it's replacing, you're actually coming out saving a bit of money. And I would say this is a great investment to get better photos over your phones and just skip out on the kit lens entirely. Con number 3, no optical steady shot built in, which is a bummer, especially when you own a camera like the ZV-E10 or the Fujifilm X-M5 with no in-body image stabilization. I have no justification for this other than get a camera with in-body image stabilization. And finally, con number 4, it does stop short at 40mm, but if history is anything to go off by, Sigma will likely release a 50 to 100mm f1.8. Yup, you heard me right. Why did I just say that? Well, this lens here is actually a modern mirrorless reincarnation of the famous 18 to 35mm f1.8 DSLR lens from 2013. A lens that your grandpa might have talked very highly about.
It certainly did.
And Sigma released a 50 to 100mm to be paired with it back in 2016. So I'm looking forward to a modern 50 to 100mm to go along with this lens. And then we'll have an amazing trio of Sigma lenses. 10 to 18mm f2.8, 17 to 40mm f1.8, 50 to 100mm f1.8, the ultimate APS-C combo for photos and videos. Come on, Sigma, you can do it, because you can't go wrong with Jason Vong. Squarespace is an all-in-one platform to create beautiful websites. No coding knowledge needed. It's perfect if you want to showcase your photos, sell prints, and run your business online all in one place. And with Blueprint, Squarespace's new AI-powered website builder, getting started has never been easier. Just answer a few quick questions and it instantly builds a custom site with layouts, colors, and even sample content. Plus, built-in SEO tools to help more people discover your site. Use my link down below for a 14-day free trial, and when you're ready to launch, use code JASONVONG to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you guys in the next video. Peace. And truly very excited for this lens. This lens is awesome.